We're gonna watch top 10 scary and obscured monsters from Warhammer 40k. It's basically a horror by Wes Hammer. I need to get more into the Warhammer lore first, Nifa, and then I can understand the memes. I don't want to be sitting there being like, what's happening? I don't know these people. I don't know these things. I don't know. This is supposed to be, it's going to be different horror. There's going to be the top 10 scary ones. I thought this was perfect because I like horror. Okay, let's watch. Let's find out what's the creepy crawlies of the 40k universe.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. The 40k universe is filled with terrifying aliens and monsters. And since the franchise is actually pretty big, most people are familiar with some of the big ones, such as the
Am I familiar with the big ones? Am I familiar with the big ones?
terrifying undead alien robots with galaxy-killing weapons known as the Necrons. The sadomasochist
I do know the Necrons. Look at me knowing stuff.
We won't stop repeating the same unfunny jokes from 20 years ago.
But isn't that the same thing with any fan base, guys? That you just like get obsessed with a joke and you just, you know, hold on to it for your dear life?
BDSM elves of the Dark Eldar, or even the voracious Tyranid swarm. But the galaxy is a pretty big place, and there's some truly terrifying aliens out there that don't get nearly enough attention. Like a race of alien parasites that feed off of religious worship, or a floating
that's cool. Also, whoa. That's my brain, guys. That's exactly what my brain looks like. It's 1-to-1.
brain jellyfish that takes over your head and turns your emotions into a weapon. So today we're gonna take a look at 10 super scary and obscure aliens from 40k that you've probably never heard of. Let's get into the grimdark. In the number 10 spot, we have the Chimera. Let's start this list with a creature that literally feeds on nightmares. They're known as the Chimera and resemble large skinless dogs or cats made out of raw muscle and bone. They're like an amalgamation of flesh, teeth, and talons. Their skulls have multiple small black eyes, like that of a spider, and it's said that their bodies glisten as if they're wet, no matter how much
Glistening.
illumination there is. They are truly terrifying to look at. The Chimera are vicious predators that hunt by sensing the psychic presence given off by sentient creatures. Often this causes them to have a particular fondness for people with psychic abilities, being drawn to them like sharks to the scent of blood. Whether hunting on instinct or being directed by a malicious entity that has somehow gained power over them, they are absolutely
They hunt the psychic. So guys, just be non-psychic. You'll be safe from them. Just be lame.
ruthless killing machines, often being tamed and employed by the Dark Eldar as a form of shock unit. Despite their terrifying appearance, these creatures are not actually demons, even though they are technically from the Warp. You see, the Warp is a parallel universe, a realm of emotion. And
wait, the Warp is a parallel universe? What? This is news to me. Am I learning new things too? There's a Xenos that feed off worship. Cam, you are a Xenos? What do you mean I'm a Xenos? Why would I be a Xenos? I don't feed off anything. I feed off toast. I eat bread.
And that includes all of the emotions felt by sentient creatures. The psychic energy left by the emotions of fear and terror leave a particular footprint in the Warp that sometimes a cyst can develop on. As the cyst grows, it will eventually birth a Chimera. As creatures of the Warp, the Chimera do not have a physical form, not really. They tend to drift between the physical universe
It's basically a moving pimple of the Warp
and the Immaterium. In fact, the Chimera are able to phase between the two existences at will. This means that nothing can get in their way when in pursuit of prey. Barricades, locked doors, it doesn't matter. If the Chimera are locked onto you, there is no escaping them. They've even been known to materialize inside of the cockpits of aircrafts, in armored troop transports, or even on the decks of void-borne ships. Now, what's really interesting about them is that through spreading fear and terror during their attacks, the Chimera are subsequently allowing for their continued existence. Not only do they feed on this torment, but their presence will generate new waking nightmares in any survivors. Stories of their attacks will spread across the sector, infecting the minds of other people, which will then in turn generate fear in the Warp for them to spawn.
That's a really long tongue. Guys, this monster here, this monster right here belongs on a hear me out cake.
Spawn on. In the number 9 spot, we have the Medusa. The Medusa resemble large floating brains covered in tentacles. Now, other than their truly unsettling appearance, there isn't anything particularly horrifying or dangerous about them off the bat, as a full-grown adult would have no problem fighting them off with a baseball bat. However, the Medusa are far more dangerous than their initial appearance lets on.
This is brain slug, right? It's basically like the brain slug in Futurama. It's just like wants to take over the brain.
You see, they are empathetic hunters in that they eat emotions. In order to hunt successfully, they will attempt to attach to a living host, and once in control of their body, they will force the host to experience emotion to ludicrously heightened levels. What's truly terrifying about the Medusa is that by all accounts, it is the ultimate parasite, as unlike other parasitic creatures, it doesn't just feed off of its host, but literally becomes one with them. The Medusa will attempt to attach to the victim, taking over the back of their head and injecting them with many whip-like appendages. Each of these resembles a spinal cord, and once inside the victim's body, the appendages will link with its neural system and begin to take over. Even though they tend to take over the host's body, they mostly leave the minds intact. In fact, the host is still able to experience everything.
I mean, a parasite is basically an invader, Walkie.
In the 40k universe, they have a book on xenology. Unfortunately, it was written by a heretic.
Of course it was. Of course it was. I don't know what that is. I don't know what a xenology is.
Maintain their mind and all of their senses. An individual who has been infected by a Medusa becomes incredibly dangerous. It is said that just by meeting their gaze, the creature can cause emotional hemorrhaging within the victim, causing a complete overload of their brains as they're flooded with emotion. When in battle, a Medusa and its host can generate emotion-based psychic powers to wreak havoc on their enemies. They expose their victims to...
I wonder if it's possible for you to extract the Medusa without killing the host. Like, I wonder if it is possible to do that. Like, because it's like in your spinal cord. Ooh.
Overpowering feelings of anguish and terror. The waves of dread they emanate are so powerful that they can cause humans to collapse into a comatose state. Where these creatures come from is currently unknown, and some suggest that they're not native to this galaxy. Although it is also theorized that, similar to the Chimera, they are a hybrid of matter and emotion from the physical and immaterial universes. The Medusa are frequently spotted alongside the Dark Eldar, and are normally attached to their slaves. And it's not really surprising why, because it's also documented that if you were to eat a Medusa, you would experience all of that stored up emotion inside of the creature.
Would you eat a Medusa, chat? Would you want to feel those emotions that are stored up in this weird brain? What do you think that, would it be spongy? But would you eat it? That's the question. Would you eat the brain? No? Okay. Okay. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so I'm not going to eat no creature's brain.
A tidal wave of pain and pleasure.
Well, not so much fun. I know of one creature who would eat this thing. Space Marines. In truth, yes, Space Marines can get people's memories by numbing the brain, alive or dead.
Wait, are Space Marines zombies from warm bodies? Are they warm body zombies? Is that what a Space Marine really is? They can also spit acid? Interesting. Do you think acid would be a delicacy?
Dread and euphoria that will absolutely wreak havoc on your neural system. And since the Dark Eldar are kinda into this, it's probable that they raise them as pets or food, not just as living weapons. In at number 8, we have the Megarachnids. Considering that these things come from a planet known simply as Murder.
A planet named Murder? I feel like this would be a really top tier horror for anybody that has arachnophobia. So eating brains lets them get some of your memories. Yeah. But I didn't know Space Marines could do that too. What? It's so strange. I thought the Space Marines were just modified humans, but apparently they modified them too much.
You can kinda guess just how horrifying they are. You see, the Megarachnids were first discovered by the Blood Angels during the Great Crusade. When the planet was first encountered by the Imperium, it was emanating a strange signal from many tree-like growths on the planet's surface. Unfortunately for the Blood Angels, they were not able to make heads or tails out of what the signal was trying to tell them.
That's creepy.
And thus descended to the planet below. The reality was that these signals were a warning that an incredibly dangerous species known as the Megarachnids had been quarantined here. Megarachnids are spider-like creatures with 8 legs, 4 of which end in long bladed appendages used for combat. The massive strength generated by the creature's body, along with the blade's insane sharpness, meant that they could easily cleave through Space Marine armor as if it was made of wet paper. The species was also hyper-intelligent, and apparently at one point was capable of space travel. However, the species known
How are they so smart and so ugly? That's sad.
As the Interax, who had imprisoned them here, had also stripped them of all of their technology. The Megarachnids came in a variety of different shapes and sizes. Some of them were capable of flight, while others developed biological weapons like the ability to spit acid or cocoon their victims in silk as dense and hard as cement. There were even reports of some of the megarachnids that were the size of Imperial Titans. They also reproduced so quickly and laid so many eggs that the Blood Angels determined it was a waste of time to attempt to destroy their breeding grounds.
Oh my god, they're just constantly birthing. Non-stop birthing!
A combined force of Blood Angels and Emperor's children campaigned against the megarachnids for 6 months. But at the last minute, the species that had originally imprisoned them arrived on the world trying to figure out what was going on. And they actually turned out to be an advanced species of human, which the legions determined was a much more important thing to address, and thus the megarachnids were saved from extinction as the crusade immediately ended. Whether or not the megarachnids were able to repopulate is unknown, and they very well might still be out there. Before we dive into the next entry, I have a quick message from this week's sponsor.
Sponsor time, guys. Sponsor
I
time.
still love seeing these aliens. The book The War feature and had the Emperor's children fighting them, and I kid you not, the aliens threw lightning at them and the Marines just laugh it off.
I mean, they built different. That's what their armor's for. They're to protect them. Guys, has anybody here used Squarespace?
Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and let's get into the grimdark. In the number 7 spot, we have the Razor Wings.
The Razor Wing Sapling. Are you one of these? Are you one of these?
Even though the Razor Wings may resemble crows, they're more like a flying pack of piranhas. Every single Razor Wing is an incredibly effective hunter. Their sharp beaks and talons, coupled with their incredible flying speed, turns them into vicious predators. It's said that in flight, their flying speed can outpace even the Imperium scout vehicles, at least for a short time. Their claws and beaks are incredibly strong, and are able to cleave through the bones of even large herbivores with relative ease. But this isn't the main weapon that a flock of razor wings utilize. You see, their names are actually quite literal, in that the feathers of a razor wing are as sharp as monoblades.
Whoa. But how would that be convenient for the bird to kind of nestle? Does he have to keep his wings up all the time? Like, how would you like nestle your wings into that? Like, if your wings are knives, how would you get comfortable?
This means a razor wing's entire body is a deadly weapon. When hunting, a flock of razor wings is often led by a single, much larger individual known as an alpha. It flies ahead of the rest of the flock and is often the first to initiate an attack. After the alpha dives in, the rest of the flock descends upon the victim. Like a storm of razor blades, the swarm of birds rips apart their target incredibly quickly. After their prey is dead, the razor wings will carve up the carcass and carry the meat and bones to a nearby tree in order to eat. Seeing a tree covered in blood and guts being eaten by a bunch of hellbirds is something I definitely don't need to see, but is also totally metal. Seeing as how the razor wings seem to have a particular fondness for devouring the bones of their victims, many Imperial scholars believe that the increased level of calcium in their diet is directly used to strengthen and sharpen their feathers into frightening
They just like have high levels of calcium in their blood.
weapons. Razor wings are also quite intelligent and are often able to be tamed by skilled Drukhari beastmasters. Coming in at number 6 is the Unquenched.
Ooh.
The Unquenched are basically dehydrated zombie-like creatures from the world of Vaporous. These creatures are cursed with an unquenchable thirst that never ends and worsens every single day, causing them to seek out any form of moisture they can get their hands on, whether that be cans of gasoline or even human blood. There exist no formal reports about these things, and information on them is incredibly scarce.
Ooh, basically zombie mommies that are just so dehydrated. They don't want brains, they just want liquids. I need hydration. Somebody, we need to redeem hydration for these guys.
Seems like the only people who know the truth about the Unquenched, that is, what they actually are and where they come from, would be the Priest Kings of Vaporous itself, as they appeared around the same time that the Priest Kings took power. Now, what we as the audience know is that all of the Unquenched begin their lives as normal humans, with some form of psychic ability. But at some point, after drinking the water within their city, a form of corruption takes hold of them. As soon as signs of this corruption are noticed,
it's like a bacterial infection.
They are reported to the Priest Kings, and their warriors sweep in to capture them. No one knows exactly what happens during the time period in which they're captured, but there are rumors of dark rituals being conducted by the Priest Kings themselves. After a time, the individual will be taken far from civilization and cast out into the desert. For the rest of their days, they will wander the wastes as a feral, ghoulish predator, desperately and frantically searching for any form of liquid they can find. Upon examination, an Unquenched is basically a feral dehydrated zombie, Their body is completely dead, and the psychic energy that once gave them their unique abilities is refocused into keeping the body moving and creating a never-ending unquenchable thirst that drives them to madness. Interestingly enough, they seem to retain their sentience and sometimes even their personalities, although admittedly this is incredibly rare. And their vocal cords are normally the first thing to wither away. The individual who turned into an unquenched would need to have the ability to communicate psychically in order to talk to a normal person. The more time goes on, the more the unquenched mind will start to deteriorate, as the never-ending search for water drives them deeper and deeper into madness. There are rumors of unquenched who are early into their transformation, helping travelers escape the desert, and marking places on their maps to avoid. Most commonly, these are subterranean gathering spots for large groups of unquenched that have been around for a long time and have become completely deranged, and are now no
See, guys, this is why you gotta hydrate. You don't want to look like that. Drink your water.
more than feral undead predators. However, there are also reports of rogue traders that come to Vaporous specifically searching for such places, as these are the areas where the unquenched will drag their victims to, and are rumored to have incredible hoards of wealth, accumulated from all of the victims that have been drained over the generations in these cave systems. In the number 5 spot, we have the Hrud.
Ooh.
The Hrud are one of the
The what? The what? What is the what?
most bizarre alien species on this list, and this is because they have the unique ability to manipulate time and use it as a weapon. There have been multiple documented encounters with the Hrud, but many of these reports have different accounts of what they actually look like. Their depictions have ranged from small rat-like creatures that tend to infest dark places, to tall, vaguely humanoid aliens with segmented bodies and large black eyes.
That's a big difference. That's a really big difference between the two.
This has led to multiple debates on whether or not they're a bunch of different species or one and the same, all collectively known as the Hrud. What is known is that the Hrud emit a distortion field that makes it incredibly difficult for the eyes to focus on them. They could be right in front of you, and despite being directly in your path of vision, they appear like a blurry afterimage. Your brain is trying to tell you that there's something threatening coming for you, but even though you know it's there, you just can't seem to focus on it. What makes the Hrud particularly dangerous is that they emit a passive entropic field all around them that speeds up time. The field gets larger and stronger the more Hrud gather together, and on a large scale, this can cause infrastructure to collapse, crops to wither, and the human population of a world to age incredibly rapidly. When in close proximity to them, the Hrud are able to ramp up the power of these fields to render their opponents old and feeble, and thus unable to defend against their attacks.
That's the most terrifying thing. They'll age us, guys. Don't let them near me. I don't want to get old.
In one instance, when the Iron Warriors found themselves engaged with the Hrud, a space marine named Dantioch was aged 3,000 years. He was still alive after this encounter, but he was definitely a feeble old man. So if anything good was to have come out of this battle, it's that we learned that space marines do age, just super slowly. Coming in at number 4 is the Enslavers. The Enslavers are a parasitic warp creature that resembles a large-toothed jellyfish. They are drawn like hungry predators to the psychic energy generated by all living creatures, but are particularly drawn to those
There's a little bug. How Camellia denied. I ain't no egg unless I want to be.
with incredibly potent connections to the warp known as psychers. When their prey is located, the enslaver will take control of the individual's mind and will often attempt to twist and contort that person into a literal warp portal. This is an incredibly painful and horrific process, and once complete, the portal will serve as a gateway for more enslavers, who will use it to enter the physical universe. Not much is known about them, and their records
are tried to use their time speed on the Iron Warrior Primarch, Pert. He was in direct contact many times and was not affected in any way.
Because he's special. He's Keanu Reeves' baby. Of course he's gonna be fine. Cause like clearly the Space Marines got affected by it. It's just that Neo's built differently, and so his babies are built differently too.
are fragmentary at best. We do know that their first documented sightings was millions of years ago, near the end of a period known as the War in Heaven. This was the largest period of war the galaxy has ever seen, and primarily centered around the Necrons and their ancient enemies known as the Old Ones. The Enslavers were able to pour into
Wait, are Primarchs not the children of Neo, or are Primarchs what Neo is? Now I'm confused, because I remember them calling the Prime something that Neon... Because the Emperor's children, what are they called then? I'm still learning. Okay, I was right. Okay. See, I know my shit that I just learned. I know know my shit. I'm right. I'm correct. It is the Keanu Reeves children. I was right. His clone babies.
The universe in their trillions, and the resulting enslaver plague, as it was known, is believed to have played a major role in the Old One's extinction and the subsequent period where the Necrons abandoned their pursuits and went to sleep within their tomb worlds for 60 million years.
Wow, that's
there
a
have
long
been
time.
reported sightings of enslavers as recently as M41 by Ordo Malleus of the Imperial Inquisition, so we know they're still out there, but hopefully they remain a rarity. In the number 3 spot, we have the cranial leeches. The cranial leeches are a voracious grub-like alien parasite that has plagued the Escalon sector for generations. Their exact origins remain unclear, but it is believed by the individuals that live in this sector that they are a form of organic weaponry grown by a malicious, unknown alien species. Tales of cranial leeches attacking humans have existed for a long time, and the reports indicate that the leech will attempt to forcibly burrow under the victim's skin, using its razor-sharp lamprey-like maw to create an entry point, or more commonly and disgustingly, by attacking the victim's eyes or other soft tissue. Once inside the body, the cranial leech will rapidly and hungrily begin to consume anything in its path as it
Those remind me of those pea fish. I don't like this.
tunnels towards the victim's brain. The process on average takes about 5 minutes to complete, and once the leech reaches the brain, it'll unleash a series of tendrils from its body that connect to the victim's neural tissue. It will then pulse out shockwaves into the flesh that cause an intense feeling of agony, causing the victim to convulse and seize. Once the leech is fully implemented, the convulsions will cease and the individual will become incredibly suggestible as the leech messes with the victim's mind.
What's with Warhammer liking to mess with your brain? It likes to just mess with my brain. It's like, leave my brain alone. Just murder me, please.
Whoever the leech's controller is will then be able to manipulate the person into carrying out their bidding. Some reports state that these creatures have been spotted being sold in what is known as the faceless trade, which you can think of as a black market that specializes in alien relics and technology that have been deemed heretical by the Inquisition. And where these individuals are getting those leeches from is, however, still unknown. In the number 2 spot, we have the Nephilim. There are definitely a lot of
I remember this thing. The Inquisition used these as torture and to get answers from prisoners.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense. You put leeches into somebody and they're going to answer some questions to get the leech taken out of them. These things look so creepy. They have like a little derpy face.
Parasitic and mind-controlling type creatures within the 40k universe. But the Nephilim were probably the most bizarre, in that they didn't feed off emotions like the Medusa, or fear like the Chimera.
Guys, there's a hole in them. What happened here? What happens here?
But they actually fed off of religious adulation. The Nephilim were first encountered on the human world of Malchior, said to be twice as tall as a space marine and slow moving.
Now, the question is, they feed off religion admiration. Does that mean, like, if you have, like, a belief in something, like, that is the same power of a religious belief, would they also feed off that? Or does it have to be religious belief? And then what religion do they feed off of? Is it all religions?
The Nephilim had round torsos and appeared in multiple different colors. It was believed that these colors indicated some type of rank within their society. With no mouths to eat any kind of organic matter, the Nephilim instead fed off the psychic energy generated specifically through religious worship. When they would arrive on a planet, they would greet the human colonists with open arms and
like, if it's like religious worship, if you worship like a cult, would that be the same type of energy, the same vibes, you know what I mean?
Preach of their religion and the rewards that awaited in heaven for all that followed in their path. The aliens were said to be incredibly charismatic and were able to influence those around them through a combination of their honeyed words and the ability to psychically manipulate those around them. They would even grant their followers masks made of their own flesh that would latch onto them and further pull them under their thrall. Over the years, those who believed in the Nephilim constructed many cathedrals and places of worship in their honor, fully believing in the sermons the aliens had preached. However,
oh my god, they're worshiping them and they'll feed off that worship of themselves. Oh, that's so fascinating. Don't you have to believe in them specifically? That's what I'm wondering. Is it them as a religious cult that they feed off of? You know, them being the god, is that what they feed off of?
the dark truth about the chapels was that the rapturous psychic energy created by the worship within their walls was like a feeding ground for the Nephilim. They gorge themselves on the beliefs of their flock, draining the life force from the faithful, leaving them as little more than dehydrated and desecrated husks. After a world's population had been fully drained, they would move on to a new world and begin the process again. Now, thankfully, the Nephilim are believed to be extinct, as their homeworld was eventually found by the White Scars Legion and subsequently exterminated. However, we don't really know how many worlds they actually spread to, so there's no way of knowing if they were completely wiped out or not.
I don't feel like they're that creepy. Like, they look really interesting, creepy-ish, but they're not that scary. Like, they're just there, and if you don't worship them, you're safe, basically. You know what I mean?
And in the #1 spot, we have the Sloth. The Sloth are known as one of the most terrifying and horrific alien races that continue to plague the Imperium. It is said that they are responsible for the disappearance of entire populations of countless cities or even entire worlds. They go by many names, including the Maggot Men, the Dream Eaters, or the Carrion Masters. And due to a lack of information on them, most don't even believe they exist. However, there are multiple records within the Inquisition's possession that confirm the terrifying alien species is all too real. Each individual sloth,
it's basically Oogie Boogie, guys,
appears as a giant mound of sentient wriggling maggots that writhe together in a vaguely humanoid
Oogie
shape
Boogie.
and are almost completely impervious to all forms of damage that don't completely obliterate them. Their technology is also seemingly incredibly advanced, so much so that it is often mistaken as sorcery. They're capable of constructing insanely powerful and esoteric weapons, and a wide array of horrifying constructs that blend the organic with the inorganic. The Sloth are nomadic in nature and don't seem to have a homeworld, at least not one documented by the Imperium. Their fleets
These guys are pretty interesting. I wonder how it would work with all the little worms. Are they just like their psychic power becomes them?
travel around the galaxy and they act like raiders and pirates. They'll descend upon unsuspecting worlds and creep through the dead of night to abduct their victims. Their abductions start off small, snatching 1 or 2 people off the street, but over time, more and more people will start to disappear quicker and quicker. The fear and confusion these abductions spread with seemingly no cause can cause a world's population to descend into anarchy and civil war.
Anarchy?
All directly according to the Sloth's plans, who pull on the heartstrings of a planet from the shadows. They are hyper-intelligent and fully capable of space travel, but they don't seem to be interested in expanding their empire or taking any new territory. So, thankfully, they remain few in number, choosing instead to strike from the shadows on worlds across the galaxy. What their ultimate goals are still remain a mystery. However, over the last several centuries, the number of documented sightings of the Sloth has begun to increase exponentially, signaling the alarm bells within the Inquisition. And there we go, that's 10 super creepy aliens from the 40k universe.
So that's not all the super creepy aliens. That's just 10 of them, guys. There's creepy aliens as well, right?
That you probably didn't know too much about. Which one of the ones on this list do you think is the scariest and why? Are you more afraid of the Chimera, who there's absolutely no getting away from? Or does having your brain be devoured by leeches just completely gross you out? Also, if there's any other 40k monsters that you think deserve to be on this list that I didn't mention, let me know about them down in the comments. I tend to learn more from my comment section about 40k than pretty much any other source, and I love hanging out and talking with you guys down there. Thanks again to my patrons for supporting this channel and helping me make new videos. And if you'd like to help out the channel and get your name listed at the end of my videos, my Patreon is linked down in the...
check out the Ambula, I think I am saying it right. I love that thing. So cool of a monster.
I will have to check out the Ambula. There's so many videos. Westhammer has so many, and then there's also Bricky, guys. Bricky also has so many. There's so many Warhammer videos. We're just gonna have to pause. Said she made a playlist of over 150 Warhammer videos. I'll have to ask her which ones she has on her list. The Space Marines themselves should have been on this list with their acid flinging, freaking brain eating powers.